have a non-traditional career path. I took time off with my kids when they were young, which is a decision I'm grateful I made. I don't regret that at all. But from a professional standpoint, people kind of questioned, do you have the education? Do you have, you don't have a master's degree. You don't have these, decades of experience doing these things. On paper, you're not the right person to do this. And I've had multiple times where I've been challenged by that and there's been question marks. All along the way, I felt like, no, I can do this. Like, I can see what needs to be done and I can do this. I had a lot of confidence. But we got to the point of the CEO, and I did, those first 2 years especially, I had a lot of moments where I kind of just, did we get to the point where now I don't have the experience. I don't, like, this is too big. This is, we passed the point where I can naturally do this, and now I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't have the skill set, and I don't have the experience, and I'm potentially going to railroad this organization that I can't lead it in the way that it needs to.
What if your dream role found you, not the other way around? Today, I'm talking with Tiffany Larson, the CEO of Days for Girls International, and her story is such a masterclass in trust, timing, and quiet momentum. She started as a 5-hour-a-week volunteer and is now leading a global organization that's changing so many lives. We talk about the myth of the talent show gifts, why movement creates clarity, and how to recognize that your soft skills, empathy, connection, intuition might actually be your superpowers. It's such an inspiring, grounded conversation about purpose, voice, and trusting your path is unfolding right on time. Tiffany, welcome to the Lizzy Jensen Show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been a huge fan of this podcast for a while. Really excited for our conversation.
Well, I had a chance to hear you at the Creators Conference and found out that your sister was the one running it, Marla, who I just love and adore.
Me too.
Special human and really put on something special at the conference. And you got up to talk a little bit about a service project that would be happening that day.
Yeah.
And truly I sat there, and you know this because I tried to connect with you probably the next day. I was really blown away by the work you're doing and how you're doing it. And so I just feel really lucky to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm excited for us to talk.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Tiffany Larson. I am the CEO of Days for Girls International, and I am the oldest of 4 kids. Growing up, I moved around a lot. Instead of being a military brat, I'm a Procter & Gamble brat. My dad worked for Procter & Gamble. We got transferred all over the country, and I went to 9 different schools growing up. And so I got really good at going into new spaces, meeting people, making friends. That was just a normal, everyday part of life. When I was a teenager, I realized that I loved all things global, international. If it was anything with different languages, customs, history around the world, I was all about it. And by the time I was 15, I realized that I definitely wanted to have a future of working in the international development space. I had no idea what that would look like, but I knew that my heart was there, and I knew that I wanted that to be a part of my future. I went to school at Brigham Young University and got a degree in international development and teaching English as a second language. And after I graduated, I taught ESL for a little while, teaching English. And I'll leave the rest of my story for when we talk about my involvement, but in Days for Girls. But I am the mother of 3 kids. My youngest is turning 18 this week, so I have no little babies. Wow. It's really weird. It feels like four seconds ago that I was changing diapers, but I'm about to be an empty nester. Live in Arizona and love to do all things outside in the sunshine, which I'm so grateful I get to do a lot. I'm a yoga teacher, love to hike, love to run. So that's a little bit about me.
And you can run and hike year round down there in Arizona. I mean, I try in Utah. I do my best, but
in the summer you have to get up really early.
Yes, and actually your summer's your hard season. That's right, for sure. So before we dive into the work you're doing, dive in a little bit more to where you found your confidence to do this. I love thinking about these episodes and the girls listening in and saying, wow, how would I ever become something like that or do that? And I know 12-year-old Lizzy
Yeah.
didn't think a lot of these types of things were possible. Certainly would have been scared out of my mind had I thought that I was going to be on a podcast every week. I would have been like, wait, you hate talking to people. What? Like, why did you choose that? But tell us a little bit about your journey again, like maybe
Yeah.
from even like a mentor position, someone listening
Yeah.
in. How did you find the confidence? What was your growth like? What were those experiences like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that everything is a journey, and trying to figure out how to weave this in. So I think that I gain confidence. I think that a lot of my confidence comes from my why, that once I've seen a need, I just know it needs to be done. And so then I now need to help with this. Um, I'll share a story that might hook in better later, but I actually, well, I'm trying to think how to do
Yeah.
this. It kind of hooks in better to my to just after I've shared my story about
Yeah.
Days for Girls, like in
Was
my
there
involvement.
anything younger, even like the way your parents parented
Yeah.
you, or for some people they had to go through something in college, and for
Yeah.
some it was like I kind of forgot I had to do that because my parents always did X and I just knew, or something.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's starting fresh.
Yeah, so I think I did grow up with a dad that was a cheerleader. And he's not an actual cheerleader, but he was just very vocal in noticing when when I was doing things well and really focusing on that. I will always remember I think I was 6 years old, and we had gone to this lighthouse and we had to climb up all of these stairs to get to the top. And he just could not stop talking. You are the best climbing 6-year-old I've ever seen, and just really focusing on how I could do things. And I think that his voice has resonated in my heart and in my mind through a lot of different things that I didn't know that I could do, but then I could do them.
I
So,
love that. That's the most beautiful counsel and also the scariest counsel as a parent. It's
right?
like, am I doing that? Do my
Who's that
kids know
voice in
that?
my head? Yeah.
What does
Yeah.
my voice sound like in my
Mm-hmm.
kid's head? But a
Yeah.
great thing if you've got kids still at home or even older,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
maybe take a minute right now and shoot a few texts off or go
Yeah.
cuddle that child and say something you're noticing. Like I think it's easy for me to say if I've not been doing something well, how can I make sure I never make a mistake again?
Yeah.
And maybe more effective is just to be like, oh, if I just noticed that, what can I do right in this moment to be a little better at it? And just
Yes.
take action right now.
Totally.
So I love that.
Absolutely.
What a great
Yeah.
voice to have in your head.
I'm very grateful.
So that felt like more of a constant, like, I can do this and I'm a woman
Mm-hmm.
and there are things that I have and you'd been exposed to certain things.
Yeah.
Let's jump into then your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew that I always wanted to do something in the international development space, but I had zero idea of what that would actually look like. And after my youngest started kindergarten, and I said, okay, now's the time that I want to start focusing on this. And I think something that's been a really big part of my journey is just take the next step. And sometimes that ends up being a little bit of a curvy path, but then in hindsight, it's like, oh, that actually gave me all the pieces that I need and the different experiences, and it all actually wove together in a way that made sense, almost orchestrated, but it looked a little bit curvy at the beginning. I actually ended up getting involved with an organization that works with the leprosy affected in India, and was doing some work with them. And I was in India when I ran into a volunteer with Days for Girls. And I just had so many questions. I was like, wait, what are you doing? I just had so many questions for her. And anyway, ended up, long story short, came back home and I ended up looking up Days for Girls online and was just really intrigued by everything about the organization, and was just trying to learn as much as possible. But also, I was reading the bios of the people that were involved with the organization at that point, and I will be honest, I was really intimidated. They had extensive educational backgrounds and all this incredible relevant experience that really you could see really well positioned them for their roles. And I just remember thinking, I don't know if I would be helpful here. But I just felt really, I think the word would be compelled. It almost felt like a hand on my back, like you need to reach out. You need to see if there's something that you can help with. And so that took a couple days of me looking and thinking, and I ended up filling out a volunteer application and I sent it in. And the next day, I got an email back from the organization. And long story short, I started my start at Days for Girls was working was as a volunteer, a 5-hour week volunteer position, and I dove in with all my heart. That's how I do things, and I was really excited to help in that 5-hour a week way. And I was just tried to do the best that I could. And as I started doing a few things and meeting more people in the organization, I kept getting, oh, you know who would be really good at that? Tiffany could help with that. And Tiffany could do this. And so it started 5 hours a week and then 10 hours a week and then 15 hours a week. And within the first couple months, I was then now volunteering full time for the organization and loving it. Fast forward about 6 months in, they asked for me to take on a staff position being the director of their volunteer program. There's about 13,000 volunteers that
Oh,
volunteer with
wow.
Days for Girls.
Huge
It's huge.
organization.
It's really huge. Yeah. And so I was kind of taken aback at that extension of that offer to do that. And at that point, I had a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And I wasn't looking for a full-time job. That's not what I was looking for. And I am a woman of faith and took a few days to think about that and pray and ponder. And the answer was really clear. This is exactly what you need to be doing. And so I took some deep breaths and stepped out into that next phase. And I I am a systems and process girl. Like I love to build efficiencies into things. And so it was a time of a lot of growth for the organization. And I pretty much ended up rebuilding that entire volunteer program so that we could have, with less resources, we could handle the capacity of that many volunteers that were wanting to support the organization and our goals and our mission. And a couple more years into things, I ended up being asked to be chief program officer, also chief operating officer. And then in 2021, the CEO and founder that had been Days for Girls began in 2008. And in 2021, at 13 years into the organization, the founder decided that she was considering stepping out of the day-to-day. And at that point, I was working very closely with her, and I knew that she was considering that. And then eventually she made the decision that she wanted to step out of the day-to-day, and they approached me to ask me to be the CEO. And I was really taken aback by that. But I also, and my immediate answer was absolutely not. This is not the right time in my life. And I had a front row seat to what that looked like. So I knew how much travel that took. I knew how many hours that took. I knew the burden that would take, and the weight of responsibility of that. And I just, this is not the right season for me. And I was doing some other projects in the organization that were really, I was like, I need to be focusing over here on this. And a couple of weeks went by, and they came and asked me again. And I again said no and explained all the reasons why this was not the right fit. And I ended up having a conversation with my husband and told him, yeah, they asked me again if I would consider doing this. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and he said, why can't it be you again? And I was like, well, and I started rattling off all the reasons to him, and he just kind of looked at me, and I ended up, we together took some time to pray and think about that. And all of a sudden I had a moment. It is supposed to be me. And that was really scary. It was incredibly scary. Because I knew what I was getting into. It wasn't the unknown, it was the known, which is kind of scarier.
100%.
Yeah. And so, they came back a third time and they asked, and at that point I was ready. And I said, yes, I would like to throw my hat in the ring for this. And so for the first 6 months, the board had asked for me to be interim CEO. And then they made the decision to bring me on as permanent CEO. And so since 2021, I've been CEO. We have 50 employees in 10 countries. We have board of directors in 11 different countries. We have 13,000 volunteers. We've reached now 3.7 million girls in 145 countries. And I feel honored that I get to do this work. It's really scary, a lot. There's just a lot of weight of responsibility that comes with it. And it's interesting because I have had many points where I felt, can I do this? Or other people question whether I could do it. I have a non-traditional career path. I took time off with my kids when they were young, which is a decision I'm grateful I made. I don't regret that at all. But from a professional standpoint, people kind of questioned, do you have the education? Do you have, you don't have a master's degree. You don't have these, decades of experience doing things on paper. You're not the right person to do this. And I've had multiple times where I've been challenged by that, and there's been question marks. All along the way, I felt like, no, I can do this. Like, I can see what needs to be done, and I can do this. I had a lot of confidence. But we got to the point of the CEO, and I did those first 2 years especially. I had a lot of moments where I kind of just, did we get to the point where now I don't have the experience. I don't, like, this is too big. This is, we passed the point where I can naturally do this, and now I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't have the skill set, and I don't have the experience, and I'm potentially going to railroad this organization that I can't lead it in the way that it needs to, which I love the organization so much that it's like I don't want to do anything that would stand in front of it being what it needs to be. And I actually I ended up going back to get my master's, and I was getting my master's through Harvard, and it was a hybrid program. Sorry, let me clear my throat. Sorry. And it's a hybrid program where a lot of it is online, but then you go in for in-person weekends at Harvard. And one particular time, I was flying from Phoenix to Boston, and I was really in the middle of feeling like, I don't know if I have what it takes to do this. Like, the problems are too big. Like, the issues, I'm out of my depth, I think is the best way of saying that. I'm out of my depth. And I got to Harvard, which in and of itself, that was another situation where I was feeling like, why am I here? How am I here? Am I the right person to be here? So I think that weekend I was just feeling a lot of inadequacies, and a lot of imposter syndrome, and a lot of, I don't know if I can do this. And it was interesting because we started the weekend, and it was a leadership class that I was in the middle of taking. And so the professor started the weekend, and she gave us a little stack of sticky notes. And she said, I want you to think about the best boss that you've ever had, the best leader that you've ever had the opportunity to work with. And I want you to identify characteristics that made them really great. And I want you to write each of them on a separate sticky note. And so we took some time, and, I was doing that. And when we got to the end of that part, she said, now I want you to look behind you. And she had put on the back wall, she had put 3 different posters around the back of the room. And one of them said IQ, and one of them said technical skills, and one of them said emotional intelligence. And she said, what I want you to do is I want you to take each of those individual sticky notes, and I want you to go put them in the category that they would apply to. And I looked down, and I was thinking, wow, all of mine go with emotional intelligence. That's interesting. I must really value emotional intelligence. But then we got up, and it turned out that all but 3 sticky notes from the entire class were over in emotional intelligence. There was only 3 sticky notes that were in the other 2 categories. And she proceeded to talk about the importance of emotional intelligence. And she said, oftentimes in business, we refer to those as soft skills. But I'm here to tell you that those are your superpowers. And that is what makes the best leaders the best leaders. They're the ones that can impact the people that they're working with, make the impact that they need within organizations. That is what makes them great. And then we ended up having this whole weekend on that topic. And I had this moment, and then flying home, where I was like, I can do this. I can. There's not this out there thing that's like, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not the technical skills that I don't have. I have what's the most important. I have a heart for this work. I have a whole lifetime of experience, and I actually am quite emotionally intelligent. And most importantly, I can do this. And I think that actually ended up being a theme for me throughout my entire master's program. That one of my biggest takeaways, of course, I learned a lot. You learn a lot by doing education. But I think that over and over and over again, one of my key takeaways throughout the program was, I already knew that. Be confident in yourself, because you can do this. And I think that sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but one of my key takeaways was, you actually knew it. Like your gut instinct was the right one, but now I know that it was the right one. But
Yeah.
in essence, it was like, just go back to the beginning. What your gut was right to begin with. So
So many great takeaways from that whole story. And I'm so grateful you take time to be here because I think you share a different side of making impact than a lot of stories that I've seen portrayed in the media. And I love to have your voice to show there is another way. And just first of all, that be solution oriented. Really think about what is a problem I care a lot about that maybe I don't even totally know if I have the capacity, but I know I care enough about it that I care enough to figure it out.
yeah.
What a great place to start, because then you're not pulling, like, we're really good at pulling ourselves apart and saying,
Yeah.
but what about this and what about that? And maybe I'm not qualified, instead of saying, am I determined enough and do I care enough?
Yeah.
That probably is the number one qualification, right?
Yeah.
And then just the model of, if you want to impact the world, you don't necessarily have to go start a new thing.
It's oftentimes best not to.
Oftentimes best not to.
Yeah.
But for me and a lot of people that I hear their stories, we hear the founder story. And so we think, I have to be a founder. Otherwise, I really can't make impact. But then we say, but my life doesn't really lend itself to being a founder.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a great organization running well and is already financially doing what it needs to be doing and has all the pieces in place, like, you may make way more impact there because they've already figured it out and done the 5 to 10 years of hard work to make things start working.
Yeah.
So your impact will directly go to output.
Totally.
And so I love, and then also just the reminder, which we don't hear enough in the media, that there's a path for you if you stop and have kids.
Yes.
And decide not to do anything else for a time. There are still so many things you're learning
yeah.
by having children. I mean, think of the rough edges. I can speak from personal experience.
Yeah.
The things that I've learned by mistakes, by just staying up late with kids, you think about the pressure of a large organization and the pressure of being a young mom.
Yeah.
They're not too dissimilar,
I am a
frankly.
huge advocate of women re-entering the workforce if that's what they choose to do after a gap for whatever reason, because there are so many transferable skills. I mean, you think about, if you just, like, as you're saying, being a mom, project management, conflict resolution. I mean, there's so many things that could show up on a resume that you're learning just in a totally different way, and they transfer. And I've seen over and over that they transfer. And women oftentimes, I think, in a professional setting don't feel like, well, the resume, but it's there.
And I think those things you just mentioned are actually harder in a home than in a company.
Totally.
Conflict resolution at work can be like, I'm just going to avoid that person.
Yeah.
You have to actually come to a place of reconciliation if you live with a person.
Yeah.
You can try for a week or two to not talk to them, and there's only so long you can go.
Totally.
And so, yeah, maybe you think maybe in a workplace I would learn this better. Or like you said, even with your Harvard degree, like I would learn more techniques or whatever. But no, the lived experience in a home will force you to learn those lessons if you stay engaged in it.
Totally. And going back to what you said earlier about the founder versus kind of stepping into something, I think it takes a whole different skill set to start something versus run things long term. And I am a huge proponent for everybody has different talents and lean into those. And those are going to look like very different things. A founder is an entrepreneur. You have to have the audacity to dream big and just go for something. I am an operator. That is a different skill set, but actually is equally needed in the next phase of growth of an organization or company or for whatever it is. And so I think that a huge part of life is continuing to lean into and figure out what you are good at. And by trying new things, you oftentimes find out you have different things that you're good at. I grew up as a teenager. I have several distinct memories of feeling just like so I don't know what the right word is, but when a talent show would come up and feeling like I don't have talents. I don't have talents because I don't sing and I can't dance and do gymnastics. Like I don't have show talents. But I have a lot of other talents that I have discovered along the way. I have discovered that I am really good at organizational design. When we have an issue in the organization and we're describing what is needed, org charts just start coming in my mind. Like it just literally downloads. It's effortless. It's a flow state. And I there I would never have known that if I hadn't been doing what I was doing. But I feel like everybody has those. If you're a mom, you know that your certain kids, you're like, oh, that's their thing. That's their thing. And you can see a flow state starting and you're like, oh, wow, they just didn't even have to try. That was just innately who they are. But it turns out creating org charts wasn't on the talent show list.
Couldn't sign up. And what are you doing? What are you playing today? Org charts.
Whatever it is. And
Yep.
I just feel like, and as a leader, one of the most important things that I do is you need to get the right people on the bus and on the right seats on the bus. And part of that is seeing and appreciating what's good about other people. And actually, I've discovered is also one of my talents that I have a unique ability when I spend time with people to notice what they're good at. I feel like as I start talking to someone, it's almost like they're not real sparkles, but I'm just seeing like sparkly. I'm like, ooh, they're this kind of person and they have this talent. And I have seen over and over again that someone is in a completely different part of the organization. And we have a need over here. And I say, you know, who would be really good at that? That person. And it's like connecting those dots. And so I think that there's just so many different types of talents. And I think that oftentimes we can get stuck in the talent show is the talents, but that there's so many others. And so I'm just a huge proponent for let's widen the view of what talents can be. And that as we start doing things that maybe are unknown to us or different, that we'll start realizing, oh, that's one of my things. That's one of my things. And that all of those are needed.
So
all
good.
of them.
And I love that you're in the position you're in because now you can start seeing the things that maybe someone else who didn't come from your background would be able to recognize and look for. Yeah. And I love women who are stepping into careers when they have more flexibility after raising kids, or if they didn't have, what timing's right for you in your life.
Yeah.
But drawing from a diverse background of people to be in these leadership opportunities lets us value and see those things more readily. It's hard if you've never seen a different career path to pick other leaders and to pull people out of those ranks. But you're in such a great position. We need more women. I don't talk a lot about women in the workforce and why we need more. But I think this is a great example to say, if you've been in that position and then you join the workforce, you're going to be able to talent scout differently.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
So I love that part of your story. And then another thing I'm going to draw out as well was the counseling with your husband piece. We don't hear enough women's voices in general in leadership, but to then draw from this already small pool, then hearing about how do they work in a relationship with this. And I've said before that my husband has this uncanny ability to see the obvious thing that's not at all obvious to me. And I think it's a spiritual thing. I think he has this spiritual set of eyes, especially with some things in my life that are really unique. And we've had our struggles, and we've, marriage is a sanctifying process if there ever was one. If you want to become a great person, be in a marriage for a long time and be really open to it and actually engage in it, it's going to shave off those rough edges. But
no, it's true.
Even doing this podcast, same thing. I had been online for a lot of years, then went offline, and then started working as an associate director at my kid's private school. And then I was like, but someday I want to go back to some of this work that I'm really interested in, work with women and help mentor. And so 2 summers ago, before school started, I said, here's the things I'm doing, and just give me some feedback and what you're seeing, like where to do a little more, where to lean out. And then up at the top, we had literally had a whiteboard out, and up at the top of the whiteboard was this, and someday I want to work with women and maybe even a podcast, and maybe it could look, and same thing. He turned to me and said, well, why wouldn't you just start that right now? I was like, well, because it doesn't make sense. You and I have both talked about, like, we don't want me to be overscheduled, and I want to have time but it was like he could see this unseen. And I hope as women, we start talking more about what does great counseling with your spouse look like? Yeah. And how is it beneficial for both of your life journeys and both of your unique impact, and take away the fact that maybe one has more of a high power career or the other is more with the kids, or however that looks. Yeah. But to really say, like, the opportunity to counsel together in a relationship of the opposite gender, you have this wealth of knowledge, experience, different
Yeah.
brain powers, different superpowers that I don't think we lean into as much as we could and would be really
Yeah.
beneficial for us. So I love that that's a part of your story
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think expanding it even from a spouse to just, your sister or your people that are close to you that can see your talents and abilities and that maybe aren't, you're not, I think letting those people in to decisions that you're making. And I think that those insights can be really powerful and can be a source of confidence when you sometimes don't think maybe that's possible for you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure you work with a lot of
I
women
do.
in your organization. What do you think stops women from talking to other women and having those brainstorming conversations? I think men talk a lot about career. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're always
Yeah.
kind of like, well, I'm doing this and what are you doing? And it's natural because lots of reasons. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say stops women? I'm hoping our audience with this question can say, oh,
Yeah.
that's me. Actually, I should do that more. I
Yeah.
could do that more.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a variety of reasons. I think that sometimes, I think sometimes people that have a desire to do more, to take whatever they're doing and to say, I want more, I want to help more, I want to help outside the sphere of influence that I currently have. I think sometimes we don't feel like we have a group to talk to about that. Maybe it wouldn't be socially accepted, or maybe um, I it just maybe doesn't feel like the right group. Um, but I think that as we explore those things more, we end up finding the people that can give that mirror back to us. And I think over and over that what we look for, we end up finding. And I've actually found that for even finding Days for Girls. I remember as a young mom, I remember feeling definitely that that was where I wanted to be and I wanted to be home with my kids, but I felt like my world was very small. And I felt like I had still these desires to do things internationally or help people, but it was like how would you ever get from here to here? And I remember feeling like the my social circle was even very small. It felt like all people that were in my same demographic and church congregation, and it was like I didn't have a lot of diversity even to where would I even go to. I had no idea how I would get from here to there. And I remember during that part of my life there was several years where a consistent prayer that I was praying was help me to know how to expand my circle of influence. And little thoughts would come to my mind, but just even like I would go around into my neighborhood that I was living in and trying to meet some people. I was going around and trying to meet my neighbors. I met a couple moms that were outside of my current social circle, very different than me, but that I was saying, let's set up a time we could go to the fire station together, and like trying to find ways to develop friendships that were outside of the circle that I was already in. And I remember that those opportunities, again, it's you start somewhere and then it leads to somewhere and then it goes to the next step. I remember at one point one of these neighbors that I had connected with, she was a really busy nurse and worked a lot, and she ended up going through a divorce. And I remember she came and talked to me, and she came and knocked on our door and said, would you be able to walk my 6th grade daughter to school in the mornings? And my kids are going to a charter school. And so I ended up thinking about that and say, yes, I actually can do that. And I'd get back from taking my kids to school and driving my kids to school, and I got back and then I would walk this 6th grade girl down the street. And I remember thinking that opportunity only came to me to help this family because of the steps that I took 3 steps back by just expanding the circle and the circle of influence. But that kept going until the question kept being, how do you expand? How do you get outside of yourself? And it was one little step after the other, which eventually took me to now I'm working with an organization in India, who then now I find out about Days for Girls. But that I've heard before that it's hard to steer a bike that's not moving. You need to be riding the bike, and then it's easy to steer. You can make adjustments, but you have to be moving. There has to be this movement, and then you can adjust. And anyway, I just feel like that has been a part of my path, that you start with one thing and a desire, and that it kind of might seem a little random, but that you're taking the next step, and then just different things come. You get
Love
what
that.
you're seeking.
I love that advice for that woman in that situation to say, well, why don't I talk to someone And the very real, literal answer could be because there's no one yet in your life that would understand.
Yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
true.
necessarily mean go to your same circle of friends who you find knowledge and wisdom and motherhood for.
Yeah.
You may need a new circle. And then for the visual and the question not to be, well, how can I change the world? Or but to actually say, how can I expand influence? That is a powerful question. And expansion can be in a teeny tiny degree.
Totally.
And that still qualifies as expansion. And so
Yeah.
you don't have to think in terms of all or nothing, big or small, large scale or not helping anyone at all.
Totally.
It's how can I expand what I'm doing? And that can look like more influence on a child in my home.
Yeah.
That can look like there's a neighbor that we don't necessarily line up with in any other way.
Yeah.
And then it also looks like a lot of trust.
Yeah.
But then the last thing you said, I just want to emphasize again one more time. I've thought about this a lot actually, and might be doing a solo on this topic, the power of momentum.
Yes.
That if the minute I start feeling like what I'm doing isn't working, or I'm not making impact, or I'm not expanding, the longer I stay in thoughts,
Yes.
the longer I spin out. And the faster that I'm like, okay, well, that didn't go well. I'm getting on Instagram stories right now. I'm obviously on socials. That's like my thing,
Yeah.
right? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, if this didn't work, the fastest way to remedy that is try a new action. A little bit of thought and then a lot of action.
Yeah.
But a lot of us do the opposite. I do the opposite. It's a lot of a lot of thought and a little bit of action, and I'm expecting change.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen that way. So you saying that, like, then just watch the momentum, and then the bike is just easier to ride, but you got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Stop thinking, start moving.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when you say that. There's have you heard of the spaghetti marshmallow challenge? Have you heard
No,
of that?
I
You'll have to
haven't.
Google it. There's a challenge that you do. It's like a team building activity, and you take, I can't remember now, but you get a marshmallow and then like sticks of spaghetti, and you have like, I don't know, 18 minutes or something, and you have to build the tallest tower that you can. And it's this team building activity. Anyway, and they've done all these like studies on it and things. Anyway, the studies show that the worst groups of people at doing this challenge are MBAs, like successful business people. Like you get those people end up being the least good at this activity, and the ones that do the best are groups of kindergartners. And the reason for that is that when you have people that are like, okay, this is the way you do something, and that we're going to spend half of the time just trying to figure out the plan. And we're going to sit here and we're going to think about, okay, so our strategy is going to be this. And we spend all this time, and then they start building and it goes wrong and they don't have enough time to remedy it. Versus the kindergartner's like, why don't we try this? That didn't work. Let's try this. Let's try that. You end up getting a better result from the kindergartners because the other group was too overthinking it and spent too much time planning and didn't just execute.
That is so powerful. And the growth actually comes in the iteration.
Yes, exactly.
And it's the same
It's
with
a
our
feedback
lives.
loop that gives
Oh.
you a lot of information.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you're wanting to work so hard at the thought process that you get one try,
Yeah.
you never got additional feedback.
Totally.
You're as good as a one hit, like as a one lap runner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
You got one lap, and however well you did, you did.
Yes.
Well, if I got a chance to run it 6 times,
Yeah.
I'm more in shape. I know it didn't work. I have some strategy now.
Yeah.
7th will be better.
Knowing what doesn't work is just as powerful as trying to figure out what is the perfect solution.
And that works in business. That also works in deciding. I want to bring this back again to our women who are like, where do I make impact?
Yeah.
Trying 8 different things. I loved that you were working with one organization when you found Days for Girls.
Yeah.
And you would have probably never found them because you were across the ocean
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
But even if you would have somehow run into someone, what you knew about who you were and what you liked because you had tried a lot of things.
Yeah.
I also think young motherhood is a great time for this because it's fun to get out with your kids and it's fun to meet people. And it's just as fun to go do a service project as it is to go to a park.
Totally.
So what a great opportunity in time to say, let's go try 50 things with absolutely zero pressure.
Yeah.
Nobody would even know that I might be here thinking, could I work for this organization someday? They're like, oh, what a fun mom with her kids. Meanwhile, you can just be slowly with no pressure on your shoulders, taking in information about yourself, the world, and what you love. And what a great base to build off again. Like I think young motherhood is actually a really, it's as good of time as your college degree
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
to actually know who you are.
Yeah, hands-on experience at the
And
max.
hands-on experience for that, even better than a college degree.
Yeah.
So what was the switch when you found, let's go to that moment in India.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about Days for Girls that was then like, oh, I think this might be my thing. How
Yeah.
did you know that? What was the spark?
So some of it was intellectual. I love international development work, and there's all these different things in the international development space that I care about, whether that's education or food scarcity or gender-based violence or economic empowerment. There's all these things that you do when you're working in the development space. But when I learned about Days for Girls and I learned that period poverty was an issue, I all of a sudden started realizing, and the data reflects this, that if you're looking to impact women and girls in any of those categories, if you're not addressing menstrual health, there's an invisible barrier before you can even get there. If you just take schools and if you care about education, you can work on building a school. You can work on doing more training for teachers. You can work on the curriculum. If the girls that are attending the school can't even get there 5 days a month, there's this invisible barrier. And so I think that what was really compelling to me was that, number one, a belief in women, a belief in how much women matter and in how much they do at a macro level for their families and communities. If you focus on women, you're focusing on the right place. There's such a huge ripple effect always in women. And so there was first a desire to focus on women. There was also a desire to say, okay, this is an efficient and a scalable solution that can make a tremendous amount of impact fairly quickly. And then I ended up just learning more about Days for Girls. And I think that my why kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And now this is my whole life.
And again, so many things we could pull out from that. Those of you listening in, what is the template that Tiffany just built on what might be helpful as I'm thinking about the impact and what I want to do. But let's jump into a little bit of more about Days for Girls.
Yeah. Yeah. So Days for Girls began in 2008. And the founder of Days for Girls was working with a group in Kenya. It's actually kind of a similar-ish story that we've been talking about, that she was working she has more of an engineering background, and she was working on fuel sources in Kenya. And during that time, it was 2008, there was some post-election violence that happened, and the orphanage, she was working with an orphanage, and the orphanage was originally designed for 40 children, and the number swelled to 1,400. Like, it was just, they had all of these kids there. And she had been working with them for long enough that they reached out to her to say, hey, we're actually having a hard time feeding these kids every day. And she, I want to help. So she was trying to do anything she could think of. And she kind of ran out of ideas. What else can I even do? And she is a woman of faith. And she went to bed one night praying, what can I do to help these kids? I don't want them to be going hungry. How can I help? And she says that she didn't get any ideas, not even a bad idea. It was, just nothing came to her. She fell asleep and she sat up at 2:30 in the morning with a question that just popped in her head. Have you asked what the girls are doing for menstrual health? And she said, no, like, I don't know anything about that. So she went to the computer and she emailed the orphanage director, middle of the night in the US, it's daytime in Kenya. And she asked that question, what are the girls doing for their menstruation? And she got an answer immediately back. And she said the answer was nothing. They wait in their rooms. And she said, wait, what does that mean? And they sit on a piece of cardboard for the duration of their period, which meant that they were not going to school. It was kind of a crisis situation. And so she flew into action and said, wait, I need to be able to help with this. She realized that disposable products was going to be a one and done. It helps for a month. In a country like Kenya or in many parts of the world, there's trash infrastructure issues that you're going to end up just adding trash in an area that can't handle that anyway. And so she said, we need to come up with a washable solution. And so she is a seamstress and came together with the very first iteration of what is now the Days for Girls pad. We've actually now had 31 iterations since. It's a patented product. It lasts for
Wow.
2 to 3 years. It's and every iteration since has been informed by feedback from the girls that were using it, so that we know that it's comfortable, it lasts long, it takes little water to wash, dries quickly, all the things. Anyway, so she flew into action, put together the very first iteration of the Days for Girls kit and the Days for Girls pad, and then went to Kenya, met with about 500 girls in this particular orphanage that were not having the products that they needed and had been sitting on a piece of cardboard. And they distributed the products, and they did a very rudimentary menstrual health education training, the first one that Days for Girls had done. And they came up afterwards, a bunch of the girls, and were just holding and hugging their kits. And what they said was, we are so happy to have these, before we were having to let them use us so that we could leave our rooms. And what that meant was that they were being sexually exploited in exchange for a single disposable pad so that they could go to school or do the things that they would want to do. Wow. And that we actually find that quite a bit, especially in East Africa, but across many parts of the world, that girls are so committed and so in such dire situations already that they know that they have to get their education. That's their ticket out. And if they have their period, they need to get to school. So they're in a dire situation and end up having sexual exploitation in exchange for pads. In Kenya, the data shows that 2 out of 3 girls get menstrual products from sexual partners.
Wow.
And so that was the day that Days for Girls was born. And so that began the beginning of the organization. And now we've reached 3.7 million girls in 145 countries. We've been through 31 iterations of the product that we use, and 13,000 volunteers. We have social enterprises in 29 countries, which are small businesses that we work with, that sew and sell the menstrual products, so that they're not just doing the work that Days for Girls is doing, but they're also generating an income and creating jobs in their own communities. And our programming now, we have access to menstrual products. So we have this washable pad, but we also educate about all menstrual products, and we talk about the pros and cons of different ones, and actually demo those to the girls, because they're not familiar with what they would even have access to. We do a menstrual health education session with every Days for Girls kit that goes out, and there's a lot of shame and stigma surrounding menstruation around the world because it's a taboo topic. It's not talked about, and then there ends up being a lot of misunderstanding around that topic, a lot of cultural practices that you can't touch new babies, you can't eat this kind of food. There's a lot of shame and secrecy around menstruation. And so we cover topics about puberty, about what menstruation is. We talk about how babies are made. And I have been with groups of women that have 5 kids that didn't know how babies were made. They thought babies just kept coming. They didn't have any idea the linkage between what was happening. Yeah, many times. This is just really basic information that ends up being truly life-changing. We cover topics. We teach them how to track their menstrual cycle. We teach them self-defense. We talk about protecting yourself from sex trafficking. We talk about product options. And it ends up being, usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours for the curriculum. And I think the education is actually more important than the product. It's life-changing.
I mean, what a work. And as I'm hearing you go through all of this and thinking, the question I used to ask at the end of every podcast episode last season was, if you could leave a legacy to the world, what do you hope it would be? And I'm just hearing you go through all the things you're saying, and then thinking of each individual girl whose life is changed by that. Like, I don't know, Tiffany, you would be up there on my list of like, who really changed the world? Like what your organization is doing, and thinking specifically of women and all of those topics. And if they could learn these things that they had never learned in their whole lives, like what a great work.
Thank you. Well, and it's only possible because of so many people. I mean, 13,000 volunteers are making this work possible. It's because of many of us gathering together and saying, this matters, and that that's open-ended. I mean, more people can join. This is something that many people can can join and become a part of, and that together this can be an issue that our generation fixes. There's a lot of really difficult problems, and our founder talks about this all the time, that there's so many difficult problems, but this doesn't have to be one of them. This is actually a very scalable economic intervention, and that if we can just get rid of this for girls, then they can fly. I mean, there's a proverb in Africa that talks about, for any culture to soar, it's like a bird, that if one wing is held in, that culture and organization can't soar. And it's like, we have to unleash women. We need both men and women to be a part of the solution, and that for both men and women to be a part of leadership and their voices heard, to have that complete, to the best possible options for communities, countries, the world. I see over and over that the world needs our women in it. We're needed. Our voices are needed, our perspectives are needed, and the ripple effect going out from every woman and the potential for that is significant and so needed in every corner of the world.
Beautifully said. And what a beautiful message. And I feel it the same. And I really speak to women for that reason, because the impact of one woman on a neighborhood, on a family, on a community, on the world, I think is unmeasurable. I truly do. Well, you have, I think, unlocked a lot of women today, hearing your story and hearing where you started, and making it feel doable, and that it doesn't matter where we're starting from. There is a next step and a next step and a next step. So just take the one, and don't be too much in your own head as you do it. If I gave a mic to you for the whole world, what would you want to share?
I would want to share something I've already said during this podcast, but the world needs our women. The world needs our women so deeply. And one of my favorite quotes is, "Follow your dreams, they know the way." I think that as people are trying to figure out what their thing is, I think a really important clue is what just lights you up. What gets you excited to learn more about? Those little sparkles are clues, in my opinion. And as you just continue walking and taking that next step, you'll find yourself in places and doing things that could have surprised you 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And the world needs our women, and the world needs you. The world needs each of us to step up and to rise into our potential, whatever that looks like for us. And that can look like a lot of things. It doesn't have to be the talent show, gymnastics. It can be an org chart. It can be whatever. And the world needs our women, and the world needs our women to support other women, because as we expand our circle of influence, there's a lot of corners of the world that need more support. And so we need all women to be standing up and supporting women. And that I truly feel that as that grows, that ripple effect, the world's going to be in a very different place. It's our time.
It's our
women's time.
I'm here for it. Thank you so much for coming on today. If people want to be involved with Days for Girls, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, and we'd welcome anyone that wants to get involved. So you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, all social platforms, Days for Girls. Come to our website, daysforgirls.org. There's a lot of ways to volunteer. We have 13,000 volunteers. We have chapters and teams all over the world that you can choose to find a chapter or a team near you. If you wanted to do donation drives, or we have 3 collection points in the United States that you could come physically and join in some of the packing and some things like that. There's a lot of different ways to get involved, and you can go to the website, and we'd love for you to join.
So good. Who knows? Maybe the next CEO in 20 years is listening to this episode today.
Maybe. I'd love that.
Thank you, Tiffany, for joining us.
Thank you.
I loved this one. And if you did too, it would mean the world if you left a quick review for the podcast. It might only take you 30 seconds, and it helps so much in getting these conversations out to more women who need them. Just scroll down in your app, tap those 5 stars, and tell me one way the podcast has helped you.